Hello, my name is Shay Klingbill, and I am the Alaska State Director for MUFO. Several people have reached out and wanted me to follow up a little more with some more stories about the UFO Bigfoot connection. That is something that interests me very much, and I'm hoping that in the next few years, or maybe the next decade, we'll be able to figure that out more and have some scientific research to back up our findings and all of these strange stories that I've heard over the years. So this next tale is from someone that I would deem highly reliable. They are in some positions of authority, and they are very trustworthy. They're the kind of person that you would leave your little baby or your very elderly mother with if you suddenly had to dash off on a world-saving mission. So I take what they say and treat it as very trustworthy and credible. And this took place out in one of the villages, probably about 20 years ago. It was about 8 o'clock at night in the winter, so, it was dark. And they started seeing these orb light UFO things in the trees, probably about 100 feet from their house in the woodline. So, well, that's very interesting. So they walk out there, and these lights are behaving strangely. And they're like, what could it possibly be? We're out here in basically the middle of nowhere. They were also outside of their little village, so they didn't really have any close neighbors. So it was just them and the wilderness. So they watched the lights for a while, and then they started to feel like they were being watched. And they told me there was the strangest, oddest feeling, and they were suddenly filled with terror. And then the lights kind of blinked out and were gone, and before them was the shape of what appeared to be a very tall man with fur. Simultaneously, they heard the sound of a baby crying. They turned and ran all the way back to their cabin and dashed in, and were peering out through the window, and they could just barely see it through the gloom, just standing there. And surprisingly, even inside the cabin, they could still hear the sound of a baby crying. This lasted for a couple more minutes, in which they grew more and more worried and upset, and really, who wouldn't? And then it just kind of disappeared, and their feelings started to return to normal. So I was told my entire life that if you hear the sound of a baby crying, or a woman crying in pain, and you are the only one around, and you have no close neighbors, and it is dark, you do not go outside, because it might be a Bigfoot or something else luring you out there. This other story was also from a village, and it was back in the 60s, and a couple of people saw it, and it was described as a greenish oval UFO up in the sky. It was kind of bright, and it was hanging up there for like 5 minutes, and they were watching it, and something made them feel like they needed to go back in the house. So they went back in, and when they went to the window to look out again, it was gone. The UFO was gone. And they started hearing knocking, like someone was dragging a stick along their house, and they ran to each window and peered out, and there was nothing there. They told me that the time that this took place was in about October, in about 6 o'clock at night, so it was still pretty light out, so you could see, and there was nothing out there. They even stuck their heads out and looked around on the porch and out back, and there was nothing, and yet they kept hearing it. Knock, knock, knock. Someone dragging a stick, just hitting the side of the house. It went on for quite some time, and then it just stopped. I've actually had that happen to me, personally. Usually in October, they'll be knocking on the house, but that could be another tale for another day. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.